grant us peace. O spinner, weaver of our lives, your loom is love. May we who are gathered here be empowered by that love to weave new patterns of truth and justice into a web of life that is strong, beautiful, and everlasting.
We gather this hour as a people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest, truth and meaning, in celebration of the life that we share together.
For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time we have struck out in anger without just cause.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
For each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others.
We forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love.
The place where we are right. Yehuda Amichai. From the place where we are right, flowers will never grow in the spring. The place where we are right is hard and trampled like a yard. But doubts and love dig up the world like a mole, like a plow. And a whisper will be heard in the place where the ruined house once stood. Our Jewish neighbors, as I said earlier, are observing their high holy days, which began at Rosh Hashanah, the new year, and it concludes with the days of awe, Yom Kippur. On Yom Kippur, Jews are required to go to the people they have harmed and to make amends to them. This is a way to be written in the book of life for the year ahead, and it's serious business. But if practiced well and genuinely within the community, how powerfully bonding. So I think about two implications. The first is that you have a normal scheduled part of your life to do that evaluation of who you've harmed. Well, who wants to do that? No one. Doing a moral inventory of those one has hurt and making amends to them will sound familiar to anyone who has been part of the 12-step tradition of Alcoholics Anonymous or any of the other 12-step groups. So 12-steppers have a lot of experience doing this fearless moral inventory. Most people, however, I think, tend to tighten up pretty hard when faced with the responsibility of owning up to their harmful behavior. It's very natural to, I'm a good person. Sure you are. Sure I am. And good people hurt other people sometimes. I know someone thinks that I harmed them, but I have trauma, or I have the right to do that, or I thought I was protecting someone or something that I care about. Okay, that's okay too. And those are all true things, or it can be true, and we can still cause harm. So if invited or even commanded by your religious community to do this self-evaluation, so for instance, if you were asked to do that, if all of us were asked to do that, say tonight, what list would we come up with? And how hard would it be to come up with one? It would be a very interesting exercise to note where the tension is, or the anger, or the resistance. So one of the important practices while doing something like this is to also have self-empathy, being comfortable with our own human frailty, so that we're not just going, mea culpa, self-flagellation. That's not productive either in creating a healthy community. For those in the Jewish tradition who take the Yom Kippur practice seriously, I imagine it builds a nice strong muscle for honest looking at all conflict. If you do this yearly, I imagine it must get easier, right? Like cooking a complicated and time-consuming recipe, and if you're a cook or a baker, you might think, yeah, that's true, because you take a look at it the first time you try it, and it's like, that's really intimidating. There's a lot of ingredients and a lot of process here. I don't know if I can do it, but then eventually you do it often enough, and you internalize it, and you develop this confidence to do it. And then you realize, well, what do you know? This is part of my comfortable repertoire of skills. All healthy families and communities have expectations and practices around personal responsibility. But I do know, I'm very well aware that sitting here right this morning, there are many people who grew up with or subsequently lived with family members, roommates, friends, or partners who are constantly and perpetually not the ones causing harm. They are never the ones. They are defensive. They deflect. They blame someone else. They can't tolerate anyone broaching the subject of how their behavior has negatively impacted anyone. And this is a very tragic deficiency. It comes from fear. It comes from unhealed self-loathing. And I don't want to say narcissism because that word gets thrown around so much, and it's been used nowadays to describe anyone with selfish behaviors to the extent that I kind of think it's losing meaning. But yeah, that's also narcissistic. That kind of person is also displaying a kind of a narcissistic self-preservation. Sometimes these people make any kind of attempt for anyone else to bring them into accountability and opportunity for drama and persecution. Okay, I was wrong. I know you hate me. Or, I was wrong. Are you happy now? You've made me cry. This has the effect of training the person who would like to have a productive conversation towards mutual understanding and relationship improvement right out of ever trying to have those conversations. Just trains you right out of them. It's a sad brick wall for many that many people would rather extract themselves from the relationship rather than run into again. You don't want to hit that brick wall of drama again, and so you just give up. I love these words attributed to the Sufi mystic Rumi, translated by Coleman Bark. Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. There is a field that we all inhabit that's just the human condition. as close as any of us ever get to each other, we never truly know the heart and mind of another. Not fully. And hurts are part of what Nancy MacDonald Ladd calls the rough sandpaper of being in relationship. Nancy gave a sermon some years ago at our General Assembly where she talked about fake fights. And she was talking about within congregational life, and she talked about fake fights, like what kind of coffee to serve at coffee hour, or how strong that coffee should be, or what color to paint the sanctuary. And I will tell you from my vantage point of 30 years in parish ministry, blood does get shed over these kinds of fights. They really do. And they can really steal away our energy and our focus from those more urgent issues that need our combined attention and effort. But some fights and conflicts are not at all fake. They are very important, and they are real indeed. We have had a few here at UUCGL in recent years because we were dealing with very serious matters, very challenging issues. So fights and conflicts or hard conversations, as hard as they can be to have and difficult within community, they also can be a sign of health. They can be a good sign that people are invested and that they're passionate and that they care, and so there we go. We go into a lot of intensity. To fight well and faithfully is the task. That's the challenge. And that's why we focus so much on process, trying to conduct a good process about all matters concerning our mission. And if you ever, bemoan the fact that it takes so long for churches and many other organizations to make decisions about things, that's why. Because this faith tradition is our congregations are run by the democratic process. And so there is always this necessity of trying to build some consensus, bringing people to the table, having a lot of conversations. And that's why it takes so long. So how do we talk seriously about serious things? How do we listen? How good we are listening, and are we teaching listening skills as a spiritual practice? Yes, we are. Ron and Bonnie Fishman run the dialogue group every month. It's on Zoom, but that's one way in which many of our members have learned the lost art of listening. What do we build into our yearly or weekly calendar that encourages communication? And you can also be thinking about this in your family context or your workplace. Where do we build in careful listening where the phone's down, everything's turned off, there's no TV running, and we're fully present to each other? Where do we build in time and opportunities to consider multiple viewpoints, engage in follow-up, and take responsibility for care and sensitivity in how we disagree? These are questions we're always working out, and therefore the community is always a work in progress. So is the family. So is the everywhere. And while many congregations have created behavioral covenants, and our Board of Trustees has a covenant, and we affirm a covenant here most Sundays, any covenant really is just words on a page until that moment that you really need them, to reflect upon them, to review them, and perhaps revise them so that they can be relevant to the people who are in that community. Covenants really do come alive when they're used as a reference point for mutual discernment of where trust has been broken and relationships harmed. In the work of interpreting covenants and behavioral policies, members of a community can get clearer about who they are and where the gaps are between their vision and their actual practices and behaviors. And you know what? There's always a gap. There's always a gap. And when there is, we go back to process review. How can we do better the next time? Do we need help coming together to clear the air and move forward? And of course, if you're in a marriage relationship, you engaged in a covenant. You exchanged sacred vows with your partner when you got married. So that's another kind of covenant that you can return to. Get those vows back out. Look at what you promised How are we doing meeting these? In many religions, confession of sin is built into part of the liturgy. Some of you may remember this from other religious traditions you were part of. It's not in our Unitarian Universalist liturgy, although it used to be. Most confessions of sin, confessions of sin, disappeared by the mid to late 20th century in our congregations because people were very offended by the idea that they were habitual sinners, which of course we are. We just are. There's no reason not to be able to say so on a regular basis. It doesn't mean that we're nothing but sinners, moral failures, or that we're unworthy of love, that we can't learn from our mistakes and do better. I think it's the old-fashioned language that really got to people. Is like this, judging God was going to get you if you admitted you were messing up a bunch of the time. The only problem I see with regular confession of sin in a formal communal setting is that it can get really rote. And some of you might go, yeah, I remember that. I recited those words, but it just became something to get through. It didn't really do anything for me. But it's an opportunity to think about myself in relation to others. And in fact, if we engage in a kind of confession, we can also consider, what's my relation to all of creation? How am I doing in my stewardship to the living creatures in my care that aren't human, or the earth? If we're presented with an opportunity to repent of our failings, just the utterance of, I repent, I am sorry, I pray to be given the strength and courage to turn my ways to righteousness, Hashivenu Adonai. It can be such a relief. I get a fresh start too. The sun rises every morning and I get a fresh start too. I think that's wonderful. None of the confessions or apologies that we may ever utter mean anything if there isn't going to be a course of action to repair, though, and to restore. Rabbi Danya Ruttenberg explains that too much emphasis on the internal life of the perpetrator can get us mere feelings, maybe even some pithy words without the concrete actions of repair and change. There's also danger of emphasizing the deeds themselves without true transformation. And you can see this, I'm sure, in your own life sometimes, where we just rehearse our grievances. Sometimes, and you're just gonna, they did this and they did this and they did this. What's possible for transformation? How do we move on? What needs to happen? Transformation takes time and a lot of hard conversations and honesty. It takes reflection. It takes courage to broach a conversation and risk getting yelled at or having a door slammed in the face. Or I think about in the United States of America now, where we are trying to have hard conversations about our violent past and chattel slavery and the genocide of indigenous people, and how the backlash against that is part of that. But I'm a good person. I don't want to hear about any of that. There can't be transformation. There can't be repair. There can't be moving forward in honesty with that mentality. You don't get to say that. You don't get to read those books. We're not going to make them available. How dare you? Sometimes it takes even a very long time to know that harm has been done for some individuals. Some behaviors are accepted in certain environments, and someone doesn't even give themselves permission to acknowledge they've been wounded. You think of parenting practices, for instance, that were common some decades ago, and they're recognized today as being abusive, as the next generation realizes, hey, these customs, maybe spanking or belting or family shunning or sexual shaming, all of these, which were intended at the time to be protective or to enforce traditions or boundaries, were damaging, and they left lasting scars. The people who realize this may never receive an apology, but some elders may realize that their impact was different than their intent, and they may reach out and be willing to hear and to listen and to heal together, because almost certainly what was taught to them is what they perpetuated. Intent versus impact is a major foundational practice of justice work. I may have intended this, but my impact was this. Okay, there you get something, real to deal with. If we build this honesty into our lives, the discomfort of reaching out may become easier. And we may also get better at being asked for forgiveness. I want to encourage you in coming weeks and months to notice where you are both apologizing and how easy or difficult that is for you, and also how comfortable you are receiving an apology. Because it might be that you, like many people, are you're conditioned to say, it's okay. Oh, no, it's okay. And sometimes it is okay. Somebody bumps into you, it's not a big deal. But sometimes it's really not okay. It's not okay yet. And that's okay too. People have to come to work through things in their own time. So an apology isn't a command. It can't be a command. Forgive me. It has to be an invitation. Could you know that I regret this and I have remorse? And let that be the beginning of something. It's offered, at best, an apology is offered with a willingness to begin a conversation. For the Jewish community, reflection on one's harms and being willing to both ask for and receive forgiveness at Yom Kippur is required if one is to be written in the book of life for the coming year. In our culture of outrage farming and constant enticement to rage and blame over just about everything from sports teams to traffic to song lyrics, this practice restores dignity to the work of personal and community moral accountability. When there are so many fake fights, and it is so easy to get riled up over relatively unimportant things, it is a really worthy endeavor to sift the serious from the sensationalized and meet in that field beyond wrongdoing and right-doing, where there is an opportunity to create peace and enmity or amity and shalom, which means wholeness. See you in the fellowship hall for coffee hour.